Welcome to Permission to Kick Ass, the show that gives you a virtual seat at the bar for the real conversations that happen between entrepreneurs. I'm interviewing all kinds of business owners, from those just a few years into freelancing to CEOs helming 9-figure companies. If you've ever worried that everyone else just seems to get it and you're missing something or messing things up, this show is for you. I'm your host, Angie Coley, and let's get to it. Hey, and welcome back to Permission to Kick Ass. You might have noticed some special new music today when you popped on this episode of the show, and that is because it is officially episode 100 of the Permission to Kick Ass podcast. So we're doing something a little different today. Why? Because exactly like I said, it's the 100th episode of the show, and we wanted to bring you the very best of the best of all of the podcast guests over the last 100 episodes. So we went through the first 50 and pulled all our favorite clips, from a few seconds of goofing off to some seriously inspiring stuff. And if you heard me say the first 50 and thought, wait, Angie, didn't you say 100 a minute ago? 100 episodes? You're absolutely right. In March of 2023, we'll mark 2 years of the show, and that's when we'll release part 2 of the best of clips. And that's going to cover the back half of the first 100 episodes. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be awesome. In the meantime, let's kick this off in style. Where else could we start but the beginning? So let's kick things off with the inspiration behind the show from way back in episode 2, my mom, Mary Filio. I really wanted to have you on the show because, and I don't know if I've ever articulated this to you, so if I haven't, my bad. But here, you get to hear it as the world gets to hear it. You've been my hero and my model for entrepreneurship. And I think that's because I've watched you over the years try a business, learn a lesson, pivot, adjust, and just keep going despite all the setbacks, despite all the odds. And that's exactly why I wanted to create a show, is to help people like you and me that we've tried and we might be missing something, or we've tried and it wasn't quite the right fit for what we wanted to do, but we kept going anyway. And you're the inspiration for my show. So I love you, Mommy.
Oh, well, thank you. I love you too.
Now let's talk intros. Some folks go all out as show hosts. I've been a guest on many shows where the hosts read a pre-written bio. I prefer to keep things simple. In fact, it's something I warn my guests about before we even start recording. I usually tell them, you'd think after more than a decade as a writer and a couple years as a podcast host, I'd have some more sophisticated intro and outro process. I don't. I'm just going to tell people, meet my friend, name, say hi, and we're going to be off to the races. So, of course, when you don't have much of a prompt, people wind up winging it in sometimes hilarious ways, like these clips. Say hello to everyone, Patrick.
Hello, everyone. Coming to you live from Lexington, Kentucky.
Hi there, Angie. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Oh, I love it. Just listening to you talk, I'm going to do the typical American shtick, like just give me the accents all day long. I love Aussie accents.
Well, I'm saying the same this end. Oh, your accent is so lovely.
That's awesome. All right, welcome back to Permission to Kick Ass. With me today is my friend Justin Blackman. I am so excited for this one. Say hello, Justin.
Hello, Justin. I did it. I went dad joke right away.
I knew you were going to do that. As soon as I said it, I knew you were going to do it. But that's great.
I did too.
That's great. That's great.
It's
so
just going to be
like
40 minutes of these kind of dad jokes. Just so you know.
Yeah. 40 minutes of
Buckle
dad
up,
jokes.
Everybody.
So welcome, Alex.
Hi, Angie. It's glad to be somewhere on the internet with you, honestly.
And then comes that wonderful moment so many of us love to hate, when we're forced to talk about ourselves for the first time. Here are a few of my favorite unexpected intros from guests. Hey, and welcome back to Permission to Kick Ass. With me today is, I think, my new best friend, Mitali De Percasta. Say hi, Mitali.
Hi, you got my name right. It's amazing. I'm happy. I'm very happy.
Names are important. Names
I know. They are very important. And yeah, nice to meet you, new BFF.
I know. And that's my little mini rant for everybody that's listening. Names are important. Spell them right. Pronounce them right. It's a sign of respect. Just do the damn thing. All right, rant over. We're already in a testy mood because right before we started recording the podcast, we discovered that Mitali's laptop is haunted.
It is haunted.
It's haunted?
It's haunted. There's some strange gremlin going on. I've never experienced it. Everything was still on, but I just got a black screen and I couldn't see you, but everything was still on. And I've just realized it's my hand that does it. If I put my hand on a specific part of my laptop.
so Matali's haunted.
So
or
it's
she's
me. The
haunting
gremlin is in
laptop.
me. Yeah, I thought the gremlin was in the laptop. I think it might be in me.
The gremlin is in me. There's my subject line for this. Oh, yes. This is the one I have been waiting for. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce you to my friend Jimmy Parent, who I am very, very excited to have on Permission to Kick Ass today. Hi, Jimmy.
Hi, friend.
Tell us a little bit about your background and what you do, Jimmy.
Yeah, drugs. A lot of drugs. No, I am. That is not me. So the label that I gave myself is I am a persuasion scientist. And the reason why that's true is because I made it up.
I stayed up late and Pauline got up early. My friend Pauline Longdon, all the way from Australia. Hi, Pauline.
Hey, Angie. So good to be here.
I'm so glad we finally got to sync up. Like, we've been trying for weeks to get the schedule to work out and the timing to work out so that we could record this episode. So this makes me very happy. You've made my day.
Thank you. Thank you for being so flexible.
Oh yeah, no problem at all. That's how badly I wanted you on the show. Like, nope, I'm totally down to do this. So we were talking a little bit about your journey before the show. Let's just jump right in. You've got such a fascinating story. I don't even want to try and give it an intro. Let's just go.
Okay, so we're going to start from when I was born at a young age, or a little bit later than that. I'm just joking.
It's the Pauline hour. We're just going to do the whole life story. Once upon a time, there's a little baby born in Sydney, Australia. And even from when I was born, I didn't obviously want to come out. I was back in the late 1960s, I was actually a 10-month baby. It's I was just so reluctant to come out. And I think my life has just been pretty much an extension of that all the way through.
But spent about 6 years as a copywriter. Then realized, hey, marketing is cool, but I don't want to do that anymore, maybe. So started doing this life coaching thing and was like, holy crap, this is super awesome. So that's I'm doing a bit of both. And yeah, there you go.
I am totally biased, but you're really freaking good at it. So, hey, the mindset thing for sure. Brian, ladies and gents, everybody that is listening, ladies, gents, and others, was instrumental in helping me get past my own fear blocks about putting out this exact damn podcast. Yeah. So if nothing else, everybody, let's just have a moment of snaps or claps or celebration for the fact that you're even listening to this podcast, because Brian talked me off a ledge a couple of different times.
hey, you're the one doing it, Angie.
I remember wondering, who the hell am I to start a podcast before I signed up to coach with Brian? And when he and I first started working together, I had this thought that someday I'd know I quote unquote made it and would no longer feel like I was just making things up. Turns out imposter syndrome is a pretty common feeling at every stage of the game. From episode 9, Alex Penning reminds us that we don't know what's happening backstage in someone else's life and business.
The funny thing about imposter syndrome is that everybody's got it. Everybody's got it. And pretty much no one deserves it. I've spent a lot of time helping people figure out in their stories, where exactly it is that they became the hero, because they never see it. They never see this wonderful journey that they have overcome, their challenges that they've overcome. They don't see them. And they end up just viewing themselves as not good enough to be the hero of their own story. And that's just a real shame.
It really is. I see that a lot with people that I've coached too. And I wonder if you have noticed kind of the same thing that I have. It seems to be twofold. One, that we're in our heads, right? And we're comparing our backstage shit show, as I like to say, to somebody else's polished, multi-million-dollar Broadway rehearsal. And we're gauging ourselves on all the wrong things. We didn't see all of the backstage stuff that happened to get them to Broadway, but we're still using that to kind of treat ourselves as punching bags. And then the other thing I would say is, I saw this in myself a lot in my early days of writing, that it came easy to me. This is something that I have a natural affinity for, and I've worked hard to develop my skills, but because it comes easier to me to string a couple words together and put together a clever turn of phrase, I undervalue that a lot. And it took a lot of people telling me straight to my face that they admired my ability to wrangle words, as it were. It was an interesting revelation, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is actually a really great time to highlight the difference between a talent and a skill, because people value skills really, really, really highly, right? But if you're talented at it, somehow that becomes something we discredit.
In episode 24, Inkiru Asika and I got good and ranty about the myth of having it all together before you make a move. We're going to destroy this idea of like everybody has to have their shit together to get things done. I think that's exactly why this podcast exists, because to me, it was eye-opening the first time I met another entrepreneur that was like, oh my God, I'm so overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. I'm stuck. I don't know if I could do this. And I was like, oh my God, you too? I'm not actually alone. And so I wanted to bring that out there to the world, because especially with the newer entrepreneurs and the people that are really just taking this bet on themselves for the first time, they do exactly like you said. Exactly like you said. They look at all these other people around them and go, oh shit, that person has it all together. How do I even compare to that? Spoiler alert, you're comparing your internal shit show to their polished front stage Broadway show.
Exactly. As they say, don't compare your beginning to somebody else's middle.
Yes.
You know, but it's, I mean, I'm saying it like I've got it all like sorted out, but I do the same thing. I have to just keep reminding myself, because that's what I'm trying to tell other people, right?
In episode 7, Carolyn Ananian and I reveal the good news. You may just be right on time and not late at all.
I mean, it's interesting, right? Because we put all this attention on early achievement when statistically the vast majority of entrepreneurs, and particularly CEOs, don't reach that point until well into their 40s.
I know. And it's always bewildered me, the people that have their lives mapped out from like the time they turn 12. I know exactly, I'm going to be the prom queen. I'm going to be married by the time I'm 24. Yeah. I'm going to be a CEO by the time I'm 35. Like, they have all the steps mapped out. And I think at 26, which is about, I've been in this industry for about 10 years. That was when I was already working a job in an area that I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life in, TV development, out in LA. And I still don't really feel like I knew what I was doing.
Oh, I thought I was going to go to law school. And then I thought, I thought I was going to, go work for the government. I thought at one point I was thinking of medical school. This was at 22, of course, but like, I didn't know what I wanted. Actually, I would say that to anybody who's considering entrepreneurship. It's like, what do you really want? And do you just need therapy? I'm totally serious. I'm totally serious, because most people, are you running toward entrepreneurship or are you running away from something?
Yeah, that's a good distinction to make. And I think a lot of us share this. I know we have a mentor named Kevin Rogers, and I've talked about him on previous episodes of the podcast, but he talked about not fitting in anywhere, really, being unemployable. And that's always made me laugh, because like you, I've done just about every job under the sun. Picked up trash, been a firefighter, I've tended bar, I've done everything. I did a brief stint as a phone sex operator. No shit. Wow. That was weird. I did not last very long in that job.
I imagine not. That's a tough job. I thought waiting tables sucked.
Yeah, it was a pretty tough job, but everything that I've ever done leads me to where I am, because it gave me such a rich tapestry of experience, a rich well to draw from whenever I'm coming up with stories.
Yeah.
I love that.
I think it's also great to know what you hate.
Yes.
As much as because a lot of us, let's be honest, like the way society is built, we're not equipped to find out what we actually want. If anything, it's kind of beaten out of us by the time we graduate from school. Because we spend the first 20 years of our lives following someone else's curriculum, and nobody actually says to us, well, what do you actually want? And what does that look like? And what does success look like to you? You know, money is great, but it's not everything. And that's true, because if you define success by making your first $1 million, well, what happens when you hit that first $1 million? Now what?
Oh, that's such a great point too. I'm so glad that you said that, because there's so many people that they have a vision for their future, you know, that person that has their whole future mapped out that I still don't understand. And they get to that vision of success, and one of two things usually happens. One, either it doesn't match what their expectation was and they're disappointed. It doesn't look, they didn't cross the finish line into happiness and they're wondering, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Or they realize, okay, so I achieved all the goals. Now what?
Yeah.
Oh shit. Like, just because I crossed the finish line doesn't mean like I'm sailing into happy land for the rest of my life. Like, you still got to actually do things. So now we have to move the goalposts, try for another big goal. And so the journey goes. And then in episode 6, Ashley Berghoff reminds us that not only do we not have to do everything, we shouldn't. I just didn't know how to let go of things. I had myself so convinced that I was the only one that knew how to do all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so unwilling to trust that somebody else knew how to do this better than me. So, I mean, I guess it's a bit of ego there, but then it's a bit of maybe lack of knowledge. What would you say that is? The worry about not being able to let go.
Yeah, I have experienced the exact same thing. And in my experience, I think what it was, I think you're right, there's that ego piece to it, but there's also the sense that when you're wearing every single hat in your business and you've built it from literally nothing, it's your baby. Mm-hmm. You're so deep on every aspect of what's going on in the business, and it's part of you. I remember, you know, as I started trying to build a team, it didn't just feel like, oh, here's a part of the business to manage, or here's a client to take care of. It felt like handing over my child to somebody, right? And trying to disentangle myself from that thing. Mm-hmm. And so there's the trust issue. There's the feeling like, okay, I have all this deep knowledge in my brain. All of this is a product of me. How am I going to possibly bring someone else in who could do this in the same way that I could? How can I download that? And how can I release some of it as well, to recognize that, you know, my business isn't me. I'm the steward of my business, but it's not me. And it's actually hurting my business when it can only go as far as I can go.
So true. Focusing on what you're good at and letting go of the rest can take you pretty far. Speaking of what you're good at, you do know there's only one you in the world, right? And that your unique perspective and life experience combined with whatever it is you do, that's what makes your business offering special? From back in episode 3, Kathy Hay explains.
The gift of the internet is really, I realized early on that on the internet, people organize themselves by interests, not by geography. So your interest can be, you know, breeding pink hamsters, and somewhere out there on the internet, there will be some other people who are interested in breeding pink hamsters. So, you know, you've got this amazing opportunity to actually be yourself and actually find other people in this huge pool of other humans that are easier than ever to find. There are going to be people out there like you. So that's enormously freeing and makes it a great time in history to be alive.
And in episode 41, Jimmy Parent reveals why it's important to embrace all your weirdness.
I've been sharing something that you taught me a long time ago with some, you know, we'll call them like students, you know, or whatever, mentees. That's really what it is. Okay. And it's the let your freak flag fly. Okay. And the context is like, you know, this girl, she's like, hey, I want to get better at doing sales, having sales conversations. And I said, all right, here's one of the best things I ever learned. You know, I learned it from Angie Coley, and it's to let your freak flag fly, meaning like instead of acting, or rather behaving in how you think they want you to behave. Just go in there and just be weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like your normal weirdness, just go out there and say it's like what you see is what you get.
Yep.
And so she did that. And, this was like I think it was like a second call where like the first time she was like, like kind of reserved, trying to act like a professional, and she's being all reserved, and had a second call, and she just like totally relaxed and just like let her weirdness come out, and had like her weird cliches and jokes, inside jokes, like, people who are like into anime, they'll make like a Dragon Ball Z reference, and it's like, it'll either land or it doesn't, know, but she had like that kind of thing, and they just totally jibed with it, and they had weird jokes, and then she ended up getting the gig, and she was like, this was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
This was absolutely awesome. So I'm handing you all that credit.
Oh, well, thank you. And like to phrase that another way, and you unpacked that so well, is to think of it like a mask, or our mentor, Kevin Rogers, says it all the time, that finding a client is kind of like dating. So would you go on a date with somebody like formal, buttoned down, putting on this best front, only later on to be like, okay, when I show them the real me, are they going to leave? Well, maybe, because the person that you showed them from the beginning wasn't actually you. So like you've kind of tricked them into falling for someone that's not authentic. And, the worry that they might leave once they discover who you really are, it's totally well-founded. So I don't believe in doing that these days. If I'm currently single, I know you have got a loving partner, and that is fantastic. When I go on dates, I am not going to cover my tattoos. I am not going to refrain from swearing. I am pretty sure I'm not ready for kids, and that I probably will not be a mother, but stranger things have happened in life, and I will be open and honest about these things. And if they're a turnoff for the partner, good. We didn't waste each other's time. It's fantastic.
That's absolutely perfect. I mean, I say this, I've said this a million times, probably even on the last episode, like our brains, we do not have compartments for like work life and home life and, dating life or whatever it is, we just have one brain, and there's no compartments. And so like a business relationship, our minds don't understand the difference between a business relationship and a friend relationship and a significant other relationship. It's just, a relationship is a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so the same rules apply. Why is it different? Just because there's currency involved.
Yeah. I feel like there's gatekeepers in business on, like, if you don't do it this way, that you're going to fail. And my creative, dramatic brain really loves to picture that they're Mr. Burns, finger steepling, like, great, if they follow this advice that I'm giving them, they're going to drop out of business and fail. And then that's more business for me. I believe in business abundance, and like, I'm not a super woo person, but I'm literally on the train of like, there's not one pie that we're all competing for a slice of. There's infinite pie, because the more of us jump in here, the bigger we can build this freaking thing. And then you can claim whatever size of pie. You could make your own pie. You could make a pie big enough for you to swim in.
It could be a pizza pie.
It could be a different kind of pie altogether. It could be a moon pie. Ooh,
it could be a sweet potato pie.
Ooh, I'm just picturing all of these giant pies. Like, did you ever watch that movie Patch Adams? I'm just picturing a pie big enough for me to sit in and like eat my way through eventually and join it. It's dirty and unsanitary as fuck, but please join me in this pie. We will sit in the pie and eat it.
I just discovered you could get diabetes from a conversation. Because I'm like, I feel like I need an insulin shot right now.
The flip side of owning your uniqueness is trusting your gut, even when it's scary. From episode 27, Chaba Borzazi explains the importance of standing up for yourself.
Along the way of me becoming a freelance copywriter, I had a bunch of nightmare clients from hell, is that I call them. And a few times, I got scammed and I got exploited. And I had a few other clients as well, which were not too pleasant to work with, let's say. But at this point, I would rather just not take the money. I have the FU fund. I have some savings. I would rather not work for a year or something than to work for these, because I'm just creating content more. I'm focused on the long-term strategy. And it's just, I think it was John Carlton, another famous copywriter who is like the mentor of our mentor, Kevin Rogers, who said that, you got to be very careful of breakdown and with like submitting to these nightmare clients, because it can really mess you up. And it does more damage than the money that you take for it, because it might fuck. Can I use the F word?
You can say whatever the hell you want to on this podcast. My fucking podcast.
Hell yeah. So I'm just gonna let it go.
Yes.
The things that I've been conditioned to act politely in the society, but it fucks you up like crazy. And it might fuck up your confidence. It might give you even more imposter syndrome. It might validate some of your pre-existing false beliefs that you might have regarding yourself. So, and I had this a few times. I said, now, I'm more experienced. I'm just going to take this client, even though there are a few red flags. It's just going to be a quick work. They just need something simple from me. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. It's like, hey, it should only take you like 2 days.
Don't tell me how to do my job, bro.
Yeah.
I'll tell you how much time it takes. Thank you very much.
So I'm way more straight with them nowadays.
I'm so glad you brought that up too, because, okay, guys, if you're new to business, or maybe if you're in that intro phase, you've started your business and you're dealing with the nightmare clients, it's hard to see a light at the end of this particular tunnel. But listen to me, listen to Chava. If you stand your ground and you refuse to be treated a certain way, you'd be amazed how quickly those shitty clients fall off your radar and newer, better, more interesting projects come along with people that actually respect your expertise and your talent. And then, like we said, if you have that money saved up to float you in between finding those clients, then you don't have to take on shitty gigs. And like the thing that you said that, we're going to credit Carlton for that, because that's something that I learned early on too, is like, you're not just spending your time with this client. Like you said, you're spending mental energy. There's emotion that goes into that, because if you're a creator, a little piece of you goes into all the work. So there's like the rejection of them telling you that your work is not good enough. I had that happen to me once with a nightmare client, where the guy said, I'm not paying you the second half of the, like, he'd paid me a deposit. I'm not paying you the second half of your fee because this copy wasn't good enough. It was disappointing. It sucked. That copy sucked so much, he had it published on his website within 24 hours of refusing to pay me. Wow, did that copy suck if he decided to use it? And so, like, the reason I'm going into this kind of circular rant here is, if you're in this stage, it happens to all of us. Trust me when I say that there is a way out. I've been burned. Shaba's been burned. Every freelancer under the sun, unless they have remarkable luck, like the kind of, they need to go get lotto tickets right now luck. We've all been burned. We've all survived and come out the other side and built better businesses for it. It's part of the process to fall on your face, to take bad clients, to ignore red flags in favor of the money. It's all part of the process. From episode 30, Liana Patch expands on that idea of trusting yourself and reminds us there's no professionality police. Like, we get this idea in our heads of what constitutes professional. But then, especially since you get to run your own business and you get to call the shots, and like, I'm sitting here yet again in my Jack Skellington hoodie that I love so much. People like working with people they like. And so, I mean, if button down, stick up the ass stuffiness is your jam, hey, no judging here. I don't particularly get along well with those people. I find that they chafe at my mere presence.
Same. Weird how that works.
They don't like me very much. I'm very loud. I drop too many F-bombs, and I'm very prone to like, hey, this sounds fun. Let's go do it. And then running off. Like,
yeah, we have a lot in common.
I know. But then embracing that side of myself and tapping into that as a strength instead of trying to hide it actually wound up being what helped my career take off too. So I think that that's great that you brought that up.
Yeah. And also, I mean, not to like beat a dead horse or whatever, but there's a middle ground between like the super stuffy corporate person that nobody wants to be. We all know we don't want to be, but then like, all the way over here, there's crazy and unprofessional. But people need to get more comfortable in this space. And especially when they're in a situation where they feel threatened, like becoming mindful of the fact like, oh, this is going to be a hard topic to raise with the client, or I'm going to have a tough time writing this email. They tend to retreat back behind that wall of like, well, how would a professional say this? Instead of going the opposite direction and being like, what does a human need to communicate to another human right now?
I know. Oh God, somebody was giving me a little bit of grief earlier because they know that one of my favorite coaching lines when I'm coaching a new freelancer through a pricing challenge with a client and they can't figure out what price to quote their client. They're just pushing back and they're asking me how much. And I said, okay, this is my favorite response to somebody that says how much, and they won't answer my questions. Are you ready for this? How much does a house cost? And they're like, but you can't be that big of a smartass. I'm like, I do, but I do it with a touch of humor, kind of like what you do, Leon. I said, how much does a house cost? I promise I'm not trying to be a smartass here. But as you can tell with buying a house, there's going to be a lot of different factors. Location, school district, number of rooms, how recently, a whole bunch of questions that I need answered before I can tell you how much this house will cost. The same goes for this project that we're working on. So I really wish I could read your mind, friends, but I can't. So if you could just answer these questions, I could get you that price. I promise I want to get you a price, but I need to know a lot more. Yeah. And then it just kind of it doesn't become like me trying to hide the price from them and trick them into something. Because I feel like that's the dance that gets played a lot. Like I'm trying to get as much money out of you as I can. I'm trying to get as much work out of you as I can. And like it feels adversarial. I'm like, no, but there could be a win-win and we can have fun.
And when you're obviously more secure on like what you do and don't provide for services, then you can be like, well, it sounds like you want this thing. I don't do that, but I can do the other part of it for X dollars. So much easier to lay that line down.
So, and you have permission to do that, just to belabor the title of this podcast a little bit. But I mean, you don't have to do everything just because it feels like you should, or because a client asked you to do it. No is a totally valid answer. I mean, give it a little bit more context because they're probably going to want to know why instead of just like, nope.
Yeah. And then like, that's one of those situations where you can actually build trust by saying like, that's not my realm of expertise. Like, here's who I'd recommend. And they're like, oh my God, thank you so much for disappointing me because you were real and you didn't just try to like shit something out that wasn't good because you don't do Google AdWords, you know?
I often tell people if they ask me if I manage like the back end of email service providers and stuff like that, I'm like, oh, you don't want me anywhere near the buttons, bro. Like if there's a way to mess this up by just pushing a single button, I will find the nuclear option, my friends. Don't put me in that situation. Keep me in Google Docs where I belong. We will all be much happier for it.
Yep. Like you have a process, I have a process. Let's not break each other's processes, okay?
Yeah, exactly. Like, here's what I'm good at. This is the sandbox I like to play in. Let me introduce you to somebody with a different sandbox that will help you with your other problem.
So many sandboxes.
All of the sandboxes. That's great.
There's only poop in one of them.
Oh yeah. My brain went to the exact same place.
We had to, right?
And Chima Medje brings it home in episode 40, where she talks about the real cost of ignoring your instincts, especially when no one else can really see your vision. A couple of other interesting things too, and I wanted to circle back to this, especially that you lost all your clients because of COVID. And I feel like that's a struggle that a lot of us had last year. What was it like going through that for you, and how did you come out of it?
Oh man, it was brutal. Like I did not expect to be losing my clients. Obviously, nobody did. We kind of expect that, okay, your clients are going to be fine. They're going to keep giving you work. But it just happened over the space of 1 week. 1 week in April, and boom, every single one was gone. And it was just hard because I had just come out of a good month in March, and then I went into nothing in April, and it took a while for me to just reconcile that, okay, this is where I am. I'm at ground zero. I'm basically back to the bottom and having to like reinvent myself again. And there are several things that came out of that in a good way. Number one was that I realized I was working with businesses that were basically too small businesses. I needed to be working with bigger businesses that could ride the tide, even during a pandemic, that could still stay profitable in a pandemic, to keep sending work, whatever is going on. And I needed to be charging way more money if I was going to do that. And I needed to be better positioned if I was going to be getting those kind of clients. Because I think I was charging around $200 for a blog post then. Maybe $3K would be the good months and I'd be excited. But after that, no clients. I raised my rates. I think I started charging $600. Still no clients. Went a couple of months without work, and then I started getting traction. All of the hard work I'd put in positioning myself on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, suddenly started paying off. People were taking notes, reaching out, and then I started working with some awesome brands who told other awesome brands about me, and I started getting more referrals from copywriters, and then I raised my rate again. I did my first 10K same year, but none of this would have happened if I had not lost all of those clients who I was on the charging rates and who couldn't afford to stay in business because of a pandemic. It wouldn't have led me to the point where I was raising my rates, where I was seeing that, okay, you're working with businesses that are too small for where you want to be, or too small for what you want to be earning. So it was just basically me knowing that I'm doing the right thing by raising my rates, even without any clients. It seemed like madness. I'm doing the right thing by staying the course because I know I'm good. I know that I'm putting out content. I was consistent on social media, LinkedIn every day, creating educational content, putting out stuff on my blog. I just needed to wait for everything to get like settled. And then as soon as businesses started to stabilize again, they were back out looking for SEO writers and strategists, and I was back in business again. But this time with better clients, more sustainable work, ongoing, the kind of stuff I was basically looking for, I was getting. But it just happened on the back of me losing all my clients in April.
You're dropping such knowledge bombs, and I feel like I want to highlight everything that you're saying. But the big one that you said that like, they don't get to see this video, of course, but like my jaw literally dropped when you said it, was I had to lose all my clients to figure out that this wasn't sustainable. And I think so that's the danger zone for so many freelancers, because like they see an event like that and go, I wasn't meant for this, or I'm a failure. And they start, using themselves as punching bags. I'm a failure. Whereas you can choose, like Chima, to see it in a totally different light, like something about this isn't working. And I thought it was really, really smart of you to say, okay, I need to work with people that can survive a downturn like this, because downturns are going to happen. None of us saw a pandemic coming, none of us. And there are going to be things in the future now with a globally connected society that we're still not going to be able to see things coming in the future. But the best thing that you can do is be prepared to ride that out. And if you know you want to work with other people that believe that same thing, like I need to be prepared and I need to be able to ride that out for a few months because it's always going to turn around. I think that's so smart.
Yes. Like that ability to stay the course, even when everybody's telling you to abandon ship and do something else that is profitable right now, is so important. Because if you jump ship every time it gets difficult, you're never going to stick to anything. You're never going to become an authority for anything. You're just going to be a generalist, and you're never going to make that kind of big money you're trying to make.
So by now you might be saying, great, Angie, I'm sure all that stuff makes sense for people who are established or people who have a lot of experience and resources. But I am going to push back on you, my friend. The key is not in knowing everything there is to know. It's in trusting yourself to figure things out. From episode 35, Fabienne Raphael talks about what makes you qualified to do what you do.
I guess whenever you have something to face that scares you, then you think about that as like, yeah, if I've been over that, then, what else can happen? Who cares about people's judgment?
I know, no kidding. But like, it's really easy to get sucked into that fear, especially when you're doing something new of like, I don't know if I can figure out my way through that. What if I do fall on my face? And I love telling people, well, I mean, if you fall down in real life, not in your hypothetical business situation or whatever you're trying to do, you don't lay down and wait for death to take you.
True. It could be long if you just lay down and wait.
Just waiting with the rain and the animals and all kinds of crazy stuff. But we dramatize that a lot, especially in business, which is really weird. Like if I hit one stumbling block, it's going to be all over for me. Like,
yeah, but you said something that struck with me here in our conversation. You said like people feel that when they're starting, like, because they don't own the thing or they don't know everything. For me, I have to say that with my clients, like they already know what they're great at. So they already have their zone of genius, and that people can't take it away from you. Your new skills are maybe your business skills or the fact that you don't know how to market yourself, but you have literally the potential to be helping someone right here, right now with all the skills that you already have. And I feel that this is what people are missing when they're getting started. Like, oh my God, like they refuse to own their worth, and they're like, no, I'm just a beginner. I'm starting my coaching business. I'm starting to, teach this or whatever. But like all these skills like that you've gained over the years, like they don't have value. Like, what is this? So I hate it when people are like, well, when they're claiming that they're beginners, like coaches, beginner coaches. I'm like, yeah, you're a beginner in having your business, but no, you're not a beginner at helping people get that transformation. So I just wanted to make that clear.
No, I love that. And the head trash is so pervasive, isn't it? Like we come up with all kinds of little reasons to justify our fears. I know so I did copywriting for 10 years. I still do some on occasion, but mostly I'm transitioning to coaching. And I had the same kind of head trash too. Oh, I've literally been paid to coach for other people's programs. And I've been coaching for years and years. But I'm going out on my own now and I don't know what I'm doing. And like, blah, 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 blah. All of this head trash. And finally, this is why I love my mentors. I deliberately surround myself with people that call me on my BS in a very loving and supportive.
Yeah, of course.
They try to mirror right back at me and go, you're being ridiculous, right? So I had this story in my head when I first got started with my own coaching business, that how can I convince them they can start their own business when I can't show them I have had mine? Like I've worked for a lot of people in partnership with a lot of people for a long time. And one of my coaches just goes, yeah, but have you helped people start a business? And I was like, well, yeah. And he goes, well, how many people have you helped start a business? And I was like, oh, dozens. He goes, do they have results? And I was like, oh yeah, one just signed like a 12-month contract with his dream clients and it's going pretty well. And he was like, so remind me again why you can't start a coaching business. Like, boom. But it's funny how comforting it is to kind of step into that fear and just wallow in it for a while.
Yeah. But then, and then that kind of fear too is like, okay, get over it. Like just focus on the people that you want to help instead of focusing it on yourself. Like, when all the attention is like, oh my God, how am I going to feel? Why would people pay me whatsoever? Okay. So what about you focus on what you can do to help people? And then all your attention is on these people. So basically you're solution oriented, like you want to find a plan to help them out, or you want to do whatever it takes to make it happen for them. So take the attention away from yourself and probably I'm not saying it will like make all your problems go away, but maybe part of it, and it will give you that kick to actually get started at least.
I think that's brilliant. It's super brilliant. I've long had a philosophy in my personal life. Like when I'm getting sucked into anxiety spirals, I try to make my world bigger, as I call it. Like I've clearly become the center of the universe and my problems are so large that I can't see a way around them. So I need to get out of my center of the universe experience and like go out into the big world. And usually fairly quick order, I get that perspective that reminds me, I'm probably not even going to remember this moment in 5 years. So why am I freaking out about this now? And it gets me unstuck and gets me going.
Speaking of getting going, how serious are you about the path you're on? In episode 42, Ross O'Loughlin and I unpack the odds of success.
Yeah, it's interesting you said like you have a 50% chance of succeeding and failing. Like I know you were kind of using that as a kind of it could go one way or the other. Like what's interesting is like I looking back now, this is not to be like in any way braggadocious, like there was no way I was going to fail. But once it happened for me and I was going, like there was no way I was going to fail because I'm like, I'm not going back. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to figure this out. Like I have to figure this out. And I think when you're in that mindset, it's slightly different because it's not like, well, the will of the universe, dictates that you were lucky enough to succeed and that you get I don't think it wasn't like that for me. And for me, it was like, as soon as it happened, as soon as like I made the decision, like I was in a scenario where there was no other option. And so like I had to completely adjust my life to try and make it work in the short term, like slashing expenses, like literally doing spending the bare minimum amount, and then doing like whatever I could to start getting the money in. But I think like for a lot of folks, they struggle because I think I'll give it a try rather than I have to make this work. Like there's no other option but this working, and I have to figure it out, which is a different way to approach it. And I know you weren't like pointing out that like your chance, there's a chance you could fail, but that was
That's super smart. And I think like that ties back into what we were saying about your commitment level. And I've heard a lot of people say that too, like I'll try it out and see what happens. And to me, that's a very low commitment, low risk, low investment, which means you're not likely to see much reward by the flip side, right? And so you're not going to try hard because you've already told yourself this story of if I see results, I'll try harder. Well, you're not trying hard enough to see results. So you're on a fucking hamster wheel. Like, get off the hamster wheel. If you're going to go in like, I'm not necessarily saying like quit your job, burn the boats, and like go full freelance tomorrow. Definitely have a plan and a savings. Yes. But if you're going to commit to this thing.
In episode 21, Mitali Depercase unpacks that even more with a story about how she sold a client on a project she didn't yet know how to do.
There were two main concepts that I wanted to highlight that I think were freaking brilliant in your experience. One was that you had no idea what you were doing, but you just jumped in and said yes and figured it out. And through the course of saying yes and figuring it out, you wound up working with people that you could have that honest relationship with, where he goes, I like you. I like your writing style. Please write a book for me. And you're like, be honest, bro. Never written a book. Be patient I'm willing to try, but be patient with me. And he goes, oh, hell yeah. Have 12 times more time than you initially thought I would give you because I like working with you. So this is definitely a relationship-based business versus they're looking for the premier experts. They're looking for somebody that's going to either save them the money or charge them an assload of money because they're an expert. And that brings me to the second point rather neatly, which is not all about the money. Smart business owners recognize that if they find someone that they can depend on who reliably, routinely creates good results for them, whatever that is. If you're a photographer, you're creating amazing portraits. If you are a painter, you're creating amazing landscapes. If you're a baker, you are creating the cakes that everybody wants at their weddings. Whatever it is, people are willing to pay for that, even if it's at a premium. And there are people that are willing to buy at all prices along the spectrum. So stop it with this, like, writers only make so much shit. Mitali and I are perfect examples of the fact that you do not have to be a starving writer, folks.
Oh God, you don't. Oh. Yeah, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, I only got into copywriting because I just got jealous when I met a few copywriters and they were earning a lot more. So I was like, well, damn it, I want to earn more. So I just did it, you know? And that's the other thing. I think I was listening to one of your previous podcasts and you had, was it Robert Lucas, is it that you had? And he was saying how, you know, he taught himself to write sales pages. He just wrote 29 sales pages in 29 days. And I love that. When I heard that, I was like, hallelujah, that's what you do as a writer. Just get out there. Don't say no. Just say yes. Be honest. Don't blow, smoke up someone's ass. Don't do that. I didn't tell this guy, oh yes, I've written loads of books before, even though I hadn't written any books. I was honest to say, I've never written a book before. I've written sales pages and landing pages and emails and all that stuff. But if you're willing to give me a chance, hell yes, let's do it.
But the key to that, I think too, and I want to point this out, I want to highlight it again, because it's just so important. You didn't sell from your heels. You didn't come at it from a place of insecurity. You came at it with this inner authority, this inner confidence of, yes, I've written all of these other things. I've never written a book, honesty. But given all of this experience that I've got, I'm pretty sure I can figure it out.
Absolutely.
Do you want to work with me on this? Like, you want to give me that patience and I'll do my absolute damnedest. And they get it. You don't have to come at that from like, well, I've never written a book. I think I could do it. Like, the difference between your approach and that like timid approach is night and day.
Speaking of figuring things out, you've been doing that all your life. And sometimes you're good at it right off the bat, and sometimes you're not. From episode 50, Chris Clay breaks it down.
when you do something like that's one of the big things when you ask me like what things do I care enough about to even talk about, but one of them is exactly that. Like you just have to get started. Give yourself whatever kind of ammo you need. Like that client that you talked about, that first one that I closed that was like a 5-figure project, and by the way went into way more than that over the course of a year. That all was, all of that was done without, I had no website. I had no email list. I had none of those things. Like, you go, well, what proof do you have that you can do all the things? And no proof. There was no proof at all. It was just like, I did it. We talked it through. And it was kind of like, let's see what it looks like. You can do certain things. And when you give yourself the chance to just try it, even if it's like hiking, that's starting to build that map. That map, could go on to hiking the Appalachian Trail if you wanted it to,
Mm-hmm.
It will go to a lot of things. For me, it's gone into, I have a complete, full stack agency at this point. And, and I run a mastermind teaching other people how to do it. So you got to give yourself the chance, even if it's not, it's not failure. It is giving yourself enough, room to actually go, okay, so this part didn't work. I talk a lot about, it's one of my favorite phrases is shoe tying entrepreneurs. Like every single time you go to tie your shoes when you're a little kid, and I can speak to this well because I really, really tried to convince people when I was 5 that I could walk around in Velcro shoes forever because I could not get how to tie my own shoes. But really, I was like, I don't understand why adults don't have Velcro. This is way faster and more efficient. And it doesn't make any sense. But anyway, point being, I promise this has a point. Point being, as entrepreneurs, every single time, and even as a child, every time I tied my shoes or tried, every single time got me one step closer to a completely tied shoe. Right? Every time I took the shoelace and put it around the loop, every single time I was getting closer to having my shoes tied. And once you have them tied, have I ever in my life forgotten to how to tie my shoes? No, you won't. And it's the same thing. If you send out an email campaign, if you're an email copywriter and it falls flat, find out how to look at the data, because it's not necessarily that it's bad copy. It's, there's so many things it could be. Mm-hmm. So give yourself the chance to try the thing, start the thing, and then learn from there. We give ourselves so much pressure to get everything right the first time as adults. And it's just not a thing. It's no different than when we were kids.
Yeah, I love that, because I think I've talked about before how I think of business, especially for people that are new to business, is like, think of it like a lemonade stand. If you didn't have one of those when you were a kid, then picture an industrious entrepreneurial young kid who wants to make a couple quick bucks, sets up a table on the corner on a hot summer day with a little pitcher of lemonade that they made and starts charging people who walk by for cups of lemonade. They have a thing to sell, lemonade, cold lemonade. They have people to sell it to, thirsty people on a hot day. They have a way to take money, cash please. And they have a way to get in touch, which is they're sitting out there and people can talk to them. That's really the 4 major components that you need. Nowhere in there was a website, a merchant processor, a business license, although I have heard of some dicks being jerks to children in general. Like, you're selling lemonade on my street corner. Are you permitted for that? Like,
gosh, I have never seen that. That's horrible.
Are you permitted for your face, stupid asshole? Let the kids be entrepreneurs.
Right?
Don't
Are you
crush
kidding
their
me?
dreams.
Encourage that. My goodness.
Yeah, but I think you brought it full circle for me in that line of thinking with me, that I think when we get caught up in this need to, I've got to have all the paperwork filed, I've got to have all the bank accounts set up, I got to get the website right, I got to get all the offers written and everything like that before we even go out and try to find business, that we're trying to build the thing that we don't even know what it looks like yet. So we don't have a map. We don't even know where we're going. So we don't have a map, and we're just kind of floundering. And then we wonder why we fail.
Exactly right. And by the way, there are a couple things I want to say to that. So first, even if that kid got out there with that lemonade stand and didn't make one sale, the kid is not going to come back in and say, that doesn't work, I'm on to something else, right? Kids are kids. They are given a lot more because we're wonderful, or we try to be wonderful, loving parents, they will come back and say, you know what, Mom, what if I put strawberries in the lemonade? Would that work? What if I offered iced tea? Somebody asked me for iced tea today. Kids are going to naturally think of creative solutions, and you do the same thing. It doesn't mean that you're bad at what you're doing. It means that there are other things that you've got to try, right? Mm-hmm. And then just one other point to what you were just saying. I think it's really funny, all those things that you said, oh, you would need this, you would need that. My husband, when I was like, I'm going to start this, I'm going to do this thing on my own, was like, well, you don't even have a business plan. You don't have this, you don't have that. And I was like, whatever, I'm going to try it. I'm going to do it. And not because he's wonderfully supportive in general. It's just that his mammal brain is a lot more, drives the bus a lot more than mine does. So he was like, you don't have all these things. And I was just kind of like, well, I'm going to do it. And I'm just going to figure it out as I go. Not that I wasn't just as scared, but, not for nothing, as of January this year, he left his job and he works in my business now. So It works. It works. You just have to go and start the thing.
And if you still need convincing that you got this, check out the revelation from Rachel Mazza all the way back in episode 1, very first episode.
You said something really important that I think a lot of people miss, especially a lot of entrepreneurs as they first start out in their journey. And that is, I trust myself to figure it out. I've seen so many people, even students that I've coached, that were starting careers as entrepreneurs, as freelance writers, that were just like, I don't know what to do. How do I do this? I don't know what to do. You live in the age of Google, my baby doll. You can find out anything with a few keystrokes. Trust yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a big proponent for Googling your way to success. From the very first business I ever had to things like how to find clients, like things like that. I've definitely Googled my way through most of the early stages of all of the businesses I've run. And there's been quite a collection.
I would say that even the key to entrepreneurship or in life in general is just being resourceful. You don't have to know what you're doing. You just have to be able to figure it out.
Amen to that. Google is your friend. I mean, none of us really knew how to do what we do until we did. At some point, you've got to do the thing in order to learn how to do it best. My mentor, Kevin Rogers, talks about that a little more in depth back from episode 19.
Here we are again, both performers. You're a singer. I was a comic. And there's just some things that can only develop on a live mic. Mm-hmm. And I call it stage time. It's same with writing. As much as I want to inspire people to practice their copywriting, I know that until you're writing something that's actually going to get in front of an audience, mm-hmm. You find another gear, right? And so, finding ways to get stage time and watching people evolve, because it's one of the scariest things to say. It's the same with sales calls, right? Like mm-hmm. the thing we've seen many freelancers avoid for too long. It's like, oh my God, I'm just dreading having to show up and sell myself. They think of it that way. And what if I say the wrong thing? And if we can convince them to it's just a conversation and mm-hmm. you're vetting them as much as they're vetting you, and then they can kind of calm down. But man, your fifth, sixth, seventh, quote unquote sales call compared to your first and second are night and day. It's just, and you just got to do it. You just got to get on stage and do it.
You really do. I'm so glad you brought up that performance aspect of it too, because by now a lot of people know that I'm a singer. What most people don't know is that I avoided singing for years and years and years. I knew I wanted to sing. I was terrified to get up on stage in front of people. I was just like, I had this super irrational fear of I'm going to forget the words. I'm going to blow a big note right when I'm aiming for it. Like I'm just going to make a fool of myself. And this is 2007. I remember it fairly well. I finally screwed up all the courage and was like, I'm going to audition for this blues band. They gave me a 4-song set, like in front of people, in front of a live audience. They brought in a bunch of singers to do just little mini sets in front of the audience. I got on stage. I'm all dressed up. They start the music to the first song of my 4-song set, and I completely drew a blank.
Oh, man.
Completely drew the blank. And the funny thing is that the guitarist, he was also a singer, so that kind of pulled my ass out of the fire there. But he gets on his mic and gives me a little bit of the side eye while he's playing, and he starts singing the words.
Yeah.
And like, this is what made the difference. I did this instinctively, but I learned so much from this. Instead of stepping back and letting him perform, I jumped in on a harmony with him and just kind of made it up as I went. And the funny thing is, that song sounded great. We got a great reaction. The second song, I did the same damn thing. I forgot the words to the first 2 songs.
Wow.
Of my first set ever as a blues singer. And he did the same thing. He jumped in. I jumped in on harmony. And then for the 3rd and 4th song, we finished strong. I made the bands. It was history. But like my worst fears came true.
Yeah.
My very first gig, and I survived. And that was like the best thing I could have learned, I think.
Man, that is so great. And, you know, I bet, and they probably told you this, but the second reason they wanted you in the band was because you stepped up in that moment when everything was going wrong. You were like, all right, I'll figure this out. And, you know, pulled through twice in a row.
And in episode 47, Pauline Longden and I ranted about the quote unquote luck myth and why you'll get the side eye from us if you dare to call us lucky.
So now when I see that kind of spark that you just showed me, that I didn't come this far to come this far, that's what I love nurturing in people and being like, no, that is enough. I don't care if you don't have money. I don't care if you don't have time. I don't care if you're overwhelmed at home. I see that spark that says, I didn't get this far just to get this far. I'm doing something else. I'm doing something more. And I'm like, yes, come with me, my baby. You are mine.
Yeah, exactly. Because the thing that annoys me is like then people will look at me and go, oh, you're so lucky you've had this opportunity. And it's like, what part of it was lucky? Getting kicked out of the army, nearly driving into a tree, killing myself, not having enough money to go to a thing, having to restart all over again when I got to America because no one knew me, which I know other copywriters in Australia wouldn't have handled that. They would have gone, well, F this, I'm going back to Australia and I'll get to the top down there and I'll just stay there. And some of them have. Whereas I just knew that I was born and destined for more. So what part of it is lucky? I think when people say that you were lucky, it's such a lazy label that they put on you to make themselves feel comfortable.
It's wishing your way to success, and it's absolute bullshit. I hate that. Like, luck doesn't have a damn bit to do with this. Do you know how hard I worked with? I actually had, Mom listens to this podcast, so I'm going to, I love you, Mommy. We had a little bit of a square off once upon a time because she said that to me, I think she was going through a bit of a rough patch, but she said that like, but you don't know what it's like. You're lucky. You haven't struggled like this. I was like, did you forget that I lived in my fucking car?
Yeah.
Like I lived in my fucking car and was like, this is how much I believe that I was meant to be a writer. I'm living in my car. Luck doesn't have anything to do with it. My choices made all the difference.
Yeah.
Ooh. Yes. Magic.
And that's it, isn't it? We always have a choice. And, you know, often it's the people that are living in, you know, like the same continent. Like I've had people like when I've met them at AWAI's boot camp or, you know, also Copy Chief Live and things like that. They go, oh, you're so lucky. Or even people that would say that and they don't go to Copy Chief Live, but they live in Florida. And I go, what the hell is wrong with you? You don't even have to pay for accommodation and you can't get off your ass and go to an event that will change your life. Like, what is wrong with you? And yet I travel halfway around the world. And like each trip to America, my partner Ray and I were working out, costs us about like $20,000 because there's 2 airline tickets, there's accommodation, there's that and all the rest. We lose so much money on the currency conversion. Everything is like at least a third more. We get to America, we have to tip, which we're happy to tip. But as soon as we tip, we're instantly paying double the amount that everyone else at the table is paying because of the currency conversion.
Yeah. Oh,
so
God.
People don't realize it. And so I'm just going, you know, saying that I'm lucky is such a lazy way to give yourself an excuse for you not stepping up and showing up.
It really is. And I'm glad you mentioned Copy Chief Live because I think you will appreciate it. Of course, you're talking about luck having nothing to do with it. And my brain immediately went, what's luck got to do with it? Nothing.
Nothing. Exactly.
And you're the first guest that I've sang on the podcast.
Cool.
Plus, in episode 16, Brian McCarthy and I dug into why, even when you hit your goals, you're far from the finish line.
We can get fixated on a goal, right? I've fallen into this path. I'm starting this business and I'm going to hit this goal. And we never think about, okay, what happens when you hit the goal? Because it's not like I hit the goal and now I'm dead.
You hit the goal and you feel cool for like a week if you're lucky. And then you think of the next goal and how you got to crank out to hit that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then you discover that bringing a laptop to the beach sucks. And you're like, well, whatever.
Yeah. Who wants sand in their laptop? I wouldn't be at the beach to be at the beach. This is ridiculous. Yeah. This isn't Married with Children, guys. Like, you don't get to be Al Bundy forever living the touchdown football, like high school glory days.
Like, that's something to aspire to.
I know, but
you don't get that. That's false reality.
That's false reality. The sitcom that's not actually reality. But I mean, so many of us think of goals that way too, that like, when I get there, life will be happy. It's then.
Oh, yeah. Guess what? All your demons are still with you. Sorry.
Yeah.
And of course, even when you figured things out and reached a place of relative stability, things can still change. Pandemic, anyone? From back in episode 5, Allison Vidato shares a harrowing experience from losing a massive amount of business in a very short time frame.
So I set up Push, the business, and to help entrepreneurs. And that was like 2012, maybe, something like that. And then by 2014, so we went through explosive growth to within weeks, we lost 80% of our contracts.
Oh, no.
And the other 20% were not far behind. And we had, a substantial team. A lot of them were related to us. The others were like family to us. And suddenly, zero income. But we had a lease, we had insurance, we had all of these expenses. And it was horrendous. It was really incredibly stressful. And I remember a number of times thinking, wow, I set up this business to prevent small business failure. And here I am. I'm my own avatar. And it was really terrible. So we actually sat down. We've been in business now for 29 years. And we had other crises with the GFC and the recession in Australia and things. But this one, we stripped all our assets to keep the business afloat. Our house was attached to the business. And so we actually, this day, I'll never forget it, this day, my husband and sons appeared in the afternoon because I would go into town at, silly o'clock, 6 a.m. And then I'd come home at lunchtime, and in the afternoon I would create courses, things like that in the quiet. And they appeared and they just said, we need to look at a closing. And I'm standing there staring at them. I'll never forget it. And I'm thinking, that's the house. That's our livelihood. It's their livelihood. It's, the lovely people that work for us. And I was sort of, no, we're not. Nope. And what I did was I put Push on ice. And so here's a note to everybody. What I did, the only thing I did was I kept up the social media content calendar. And I had one team member just keep posting for me each day. So there was, the tiny bit of organic growth you get, but I still had that presence. And I just shelved it. And I lived and breathed this funnel that I had business mentors tell me couldn't be done. You can't build a funnel for the mining and resources industry. No such thing as a lead magnet. No such thing as, because they're not on social media. They don't want to download your freebie. They don't want your newsletter. It was really interesting. And then, so I just lived and breathed it. 20 hours a day, and then I would dream about it because I just kept thinking, this is our family home. And we're on acreage, and we start out with this teeny tiny house that we added as we added children because we have 6 children. And I was sort of, no, this isn't happening. So I just kept strategizing and reading everything I could. I had studied neuro leadership, so I had all sorts of growth mindset activities that I would just hound them. I'd stick them on the wall around the office. And like for me, it was things like, I'm not good at marketing yet. This funnel isn't working yet.
Yeah.
And so yet is still one of my favorite words. And so we would really, just pump it. And I'd say to them, look, if there are 100,000 projects out there, even if there's been 90% collapse, because the industry had, a catastrophic downturn. A lot of people we knew were going under, businesses were failing every day. And of course, I kept hearing things like, there's nothing out there. There are no projects. And I was sort of there, we can't think like that. And so I sat there one day and we were having a barbecue and I was sitting looking at my husband and he looked at me and he goes, what? And I said, I've just realized you're a lead magnet.
That's so great.
You are the lead magnet. You are what these people want. He has 40 years experience in a very niche industry. And we've traveled, we moved 20 times in 15 years. So he worked on, projects. His resume is amazing. And I thought, you're the lead magnet.
That is a creative solution if I have ever heard one.
Yes. What is it they say is the mother of creation?
Oh, yeah. Necessity is the mother of invention.
I was thinking desperation. So I looked at him, you are a lead magnet. So what we did, we actually wrote an email and we were getting these emails that weren't getting open. We were, building this funnel into LinkedIn because that's where, of course, that community hangs out. So we sent out an email saying, and the subject line was, we need to have a coffee. Bing, 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 bing.
Oh,
they
so
wanted
simple.
him. Yes. And then I realized so my background is I love teaching and I had founded and, developed a charity in Vietnam where I developed training for young blind people living in poverty. So training and teaching is my thing. I just love, love, love it. So when they sort of cornered me and said, you need to take over the business, my response was, we need to have training involved, for me to be at all happy. And it needs to finance the charity because, that was going to impact it. So I was looking at him and I thought, what do we have that others don't have? Because if 99% of the contracts are gone, and I kept saying this. So even if there were 100,000 and now there's only 10,000 or even 5,000, we only want 3 or 5. So it's just a much, much smaller pond. And so we need to be more creative.
And of course, when you're figuring things out on the fly and pivoting, you're bound to hit the wall eventually. From episode 46, Allison Carpio and I dig into why rest and self-care are critical to your success.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that you talk about the feelings involved in this. And then when you said sleep, I was over here just like, we need to talk about sleep. Because I coach a lot of writers as well. And I had someone on the team that I was working with on a series of emails recently that I actually had to say, hey, so I feel like I'm momming you here a little bit. Excuse me for being a parental figure here for a minute. How much are you sleeping? Because I feel like you're staying up all night to get these drafts done and it shows in the work. I actually would prefer that you get more sleep than staying up all night to get this to me. And tell me, I need an extra day. I'm sorry to slip this deadline, but I haven't had any sleep. It's okay. Talk to me, get some sleep, take care of your mind, take care of your body. You're going to do that much better work for not pushing yourself to that absolute limit.
Yeah, that's so true. And, in times like those, sometimes I just like to think of what would 60-year-old Allison say? Would she say, yeah, it was a good thing that you lost those nights of sleep for that copy project? Yeah. Or would she be like, no, it was really good that you, really prioritized your health and your sleep,
Hey, thanks for taking me out on a walk all those years ago. My joints, future Allison's joints. Thank you for helping us get some sleep.
Exactly. Joints, skin, whatever you want to use.
Okay, I'm on a skin improvement journey recently. And I also didn't realize the power of your life habits. It's not just how you wash your skin or what you put on your skin, but what you eat, how much you're sleeping, how much you're going out in the sun, stuff that I just never bothered to learn at any point in my upbringing. And so, yeah, it's all interconnected. Like, I don't understand how so many people separate their body from their business. It is your business.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Cause if you think about it, like if you were to get really sick tomorrow, and let's say you don't have team members, like let's imagine you don't have team members, or maybe you have a really small team who maybe quite depend on you. Like, how would you be able to still support yourself?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of our mutual friends, Kevin, talks about how long could your business run without you? And ever since I first heard that question, I was like, ooh, okay, so that's something that I want to work on in my business, on figuring out how to make sure that it can run without me. If I need to take time to recover, if I need time because I found a really interesting restaurant and I want to be gone off the beaten path for a couple of days having an adventure. There are multiple reasons beyond I need to rest because I got sick to take time off work, and they're all okay.
Yes, rest. I'm a big fan of rest. And I used to go to this co-working space before it closed in the pandemic, RIP. And I was very much known as the person who would take naps throughout the day in the very like public place. Like there was this bench there were pillows, people would walk back and forth. It was like a high traffic area, and I would still take naps throughout the day. Like I just need those naps.
They never get the video, but I'm over here doing like the Freddie Mercury fist in the air. Like, yes, I am the nap person too. When I used to do those big in-person conferences and I was on staff, all of my team members knew that if I disappeared in the middle of the day, it's nap time. She'll be back in like 30 minutes, maybe an hour if she's really tired. It'll be okay. Guys, you're dealing with a much better Angie when Angie takes a nap. I'm just telling you.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, I think like growing up, going to private school, like we just weren't allowed to take breaks or take any rest. Like we always had to be go, go, go kind of thing. You couldn't waste any time. And that's something I've really had to unlearn, especially in the past year in running my business, is like breaks are actually good. Like it's okay to take breaks. Like breaks aren't a sign of weakness. Rest isn't a sign of weakness. It is actually something that you are doing for yourself so you can show up and, show up with that energy, and people will notice when you are more energized rather than like feeling like you really had to be there. You dragged yourself out of bed.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And, an interesting conversation came up on another episode I recorded where we were talking about flipping that script, about feeling guilty that you're not filling up all of your time with just activities and go, 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 go. If you think in the past about what we had to do to make a business work, you had to sew your own garments. You had to find someone that could make your shoes. These things would take days and materials sourced from overseas, and you would wear them forever. Like it took so much time in the past just to make the food, make the clothes, get ready for work, go out and actually plow the field. And those are all things that technology has eliminated for a lot of us.
Mm-hmm.
I think instead of feeling guilty that time is not filled with activities, like maybe celebrate, like I'm incredibly fortunate to be in this position, to be able to work online and take the space that I need. Okay, cool. I'm going to take some space and I'm going to figure out how to make my little corner of the world a better place instead of filling my time with shit.
Yeah, really. I love really leaning into that gratitude. And another way I think about that too, because I think about guilt a lot. Thank you, Catholic Church, for that.
And all of womanhood. Appreciate your input. Not.
And my parents, they're immigrants from the Philippines. So like when they came here, they were very much under survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, you're like constantly working. You're on this like endless hamster wheel. You're always behind. And you all have this like fear of like losing everything, of not having enough money or losing all your money. This severe like lack of control. So that level of like overworking is something that I learned from my parents. And, when you hear the phrase like immigrants, we get the job done, like that's where it comes from. And also like that served my parents' generations and the generations before us. And we don't have to do that anymore. We don't have to keep doing that. We don't have to stay in survival mode. We can move more towards the thriving mode. And I think that's where rest really plays a big piece in it is, we have the luxury of rest now. So use it.
Here's one that broke my brain a bit. Realizing that you don't have to avoid feeling the feelings just to be considered professional. From episode 45, Carla Amanda Brown and I break down why we prefer freaking out to putting on a front.
All right, well, we were talking a little bit about the show about this idea of stepping stones, because I know a lot of people that are starting their businesses kind of trip up on the what do I do part, because it feels like that's the key. If I don't figure out what I do, I'm either going to be stuck, or like if I pick the wrong thing, I'm never going to achieve the goals. So let's dive into that a little bit deeper, stepping stones on the path.
Absolutely. Well, I guess I'll say right now I'm at a transition point from one stepping stone to another. And actually I've got a few to choose from. Like, I'm not sure like where I'm going to go next, or am I going to straddle a few? Which one am I going to dig into for the next however long God wants me to stay there and do the thing. But I want to tell a story from a handful of years ago. I was having a quarter life crisis and looking for a job anywhere many miles away from where I was. I just needed to go. And I had in mind, okay, keep in mind again, quarter life crisis. I'm thinking, what am I going to do for the rest of my life as I'm applying to jobs, some of which I couldn't even afford to get to the interviews for, but I'm applying all over the place, hoping and praying that I would get something, and tripped up on, I have to think positive thoughts. I have to think positive thoughts or else I won't get the job. And I basically had a breakdown in my spiritual positive bypass state, and just trying to run at the same time to figure out this thing that I'm going to do for the rest of my life. It was absolutely ridiculous. And thankfully, I had a mentor in my life who I could call and have this breakdown with and have her say, okay, Carla, breathe.
I think we need somebody in our life that can say that. Just breathe.
Exactly. Breathe. Let's start with basics. And give yourself an opportunity to have your freak out. It's life. It's real. And why are you trying to figure out what you're going to do for the rest of your life? How about you look at the next year or 2 years? Move from one stone to the next. And when you get there, especially since you're moving, then figure out the next piece. And so that was huge. It was monumental for me, who had been such a planner and pushed to plan and to say a thing and do a particular thing and make that happen. So to be able to have some freedom and this idea of taking life in shorter chunks was really useful.
Ooh, I love that. And you said, I've been making notes while you were talking, because you said a couple things that I really want to spotlight. One was this concept of toxic positivity. You didn't use those words, but I'm going to go ahead and slap that label on there, because I've fallen into that trap too myself of if I'm not thinking positive, can I even achieve this thing? But then what really happens is you wind up, and this is my amateur hour diagnosis of what happened in my own head. So y'all are going to have to be understanding with me real quick. But the way I see it was I'd have my freak out and go, no, that's bad. Stop that. Put out a happy face. And then as I'm bearing these feelings, I'm kind of putting them under pressure. And then in a moment of weakness or stress, they all just come boiling out. I like to imagine if you've seen those videos of a pressure cooker literally exploding, and the stove explodes and shatters inward, and the lid is buried in the ceiling, and this thing has just completely blown to bits. That's what happens to me when I bury my feelings and I don't actually let myself freak out. So now I have a trick, and I don't know if this is acceptable in therapy or counseling circles, but I've set a timer, and during the 15-minute freak out, which I like to call it, I can say or do whatever I want, spiral as deep as I want to go. And then when the 15 minutes are over, it's time to get to work.
Yes. Well, that's exactly what she told me.
Oh, nice. Love it.
That's exactly
it's such a small world.
Yes. She said, give yourself time, do that thing, and then move on.
Mm-hmm. And then if it and that's not, to clarify for anybody listening, I'm not saying you only have 15 minutes to freak out. Like, I'm giving myself 15 minutes to freak out right now, and then I'm going to go do the work. And you'll find that kind of dulls the intensity of the feelings, that you've processed them, let them pass through your body. Because I get those physical sensations in my body too when I'm like super stressed, that the shoulders wind up around my ears. I'm saying that this is the freak out that we're focused on right now, kind of like you said. In the future, there's probably going to be another one, at which point I will set another 15-minute timer and freak out again and then get back to work. And that's how we pull ourselves forward through all of the freaking.
Absolutely. Keep your freak out timer handy.
Speaking of freaking out, I loved having pilot Jody Robertson on the show back in episode 28. Here's how you can use her experience and training in avoiding air disasters to keep your head on straight when times get tough.
I don't know how much you can tell us about actual military training, because I think that would be fascinating. But like, how did you resolve when you're in the cockpit and you're having to pretend to be by yourself, even though you know you've kind of got that backup? How do you even begin to process that? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here with this, but I'd love to hear more about that.
From the beginning, when you go to a crew aircraft, you learn a lot of what we call crew resource management. So they really start shifting. You study a lot of airplane accidents, basically, and all the things that went wrong and all the communication breakdowns. Because generally, when an airplane, no one wants to hear about this, but when an airplane crashes, generally somebody in the cockpit had the answer. And at least early on, especially when they started developing these in the 1970s through the early 80s and 90s, when they were creating this concept of crew resource management, they found that there was a problem with communication within the cockpit. People didn't want to admit they didn't know something, or they were task saturated and didn't know it, or all these other things. And generally you would find that somebody knew the answer and they were right there. So that's why it's so important to have that network of knowledgeable people, because usually they can see something that you don't, whether it's an instructor sitting behind you in the seat going, "Hey, Jody, you landed 10 feet right of center line, and here's what I saw happen." And then I can take that information and fix what I did wrong and never do that again. It's like, well, Angie, I just really messed up this interview with this client, and I think I said this thing wrong. And you're like, well, what did you say? And then you can go, oh, well, don't do that. Do it this way. And then I learned to do better. It's kind of the same concept.
Yeah, and I think that's a really cool point to make too, because so much of, especially freelancing, like learning how to get good at the craft, is happening in your head, right? You're practicing alone in a room. We're both writers. So 80% of my job is sitting alone at the computer coming up with ideas. And then and it feels like a good idea at the moment, or maybe like you've got a good angle or a good concept, and this is feeling really good in the writing. And then the nerves kick in and you start second guessing yourself, and you start editing it a little bit too much and rearranging things, and you Frankenstein it together with pieces of other things because you're overthinking it. And then you're scared to put it out there because you're not confident on it. And this is how a lot of people I could just in the cockpit could fall into the danger zone of they're not sharing enough of what's going on, even if they're struggling, because they want to look like they're not struggling. So, I mean, I know, and that kind of on the surface sounds contradictory to what I was saying. Nobody wants to hear from a nervous pilot. There are certain people that should hear from a nervous pilot, probably the people in the tower, but not the people in the passenger part of the plane.
Right. Well, I mean, there's always ways to talk to each other, even in the cockpit, when you don't know something that doesn't sound like you're terrified, because you're usually not, that, you can go, hey, man, this is my plan. If I'm the aircraft commander, this is what's happened. This is my plan. These are the checklists we're going to run. Am I missing something? And that allows them to go, or you start even better. You go, okay, what do you want what do you think we should do right now? Because sometimes when the leader says their plan, everybody go, okay, Let's just go with that, because they couldn't possibly be wrong. They're more experienced than I am, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, they may have had a good idea that they totally disregarded because of that. So, there's ways to communicate.
And last but not least, my friend Chris Orzakowski dropped a knowledge bomb back in episode 4, all about why we do what we do and what matters most when you get to the end of the road.
I'm not really competing against other people. I'm not trying to. I'm just trying to compete against myself. And I heard this great quote this one time. Maybe it was from Scott Adams. I can't remember exactly. He said that you should never be envious of only one quality or one thing that someone else has, right? Like, unless you're willing to trade every aspect of your life with that person. And I was like, that is a really good, especially for me, like that is a really good way to reframe everything. Like there'll be people with businesses that you see, or books that they've written, or just things that they've done in their life. And you say, wow, like I wish I could have that. But unless you're really willing to trade every single aspect of your life for every single aspect of their life, and all the history and the journey and the where they were born and like all that stuff, right? Unless you're willing to swap every single aspect of your life with theirs, there's no point. That always kind of keeps me grounded as well.
No, I like that. And that's such a good point, that there are a lot of people out there, and I've been there certainly in my life. It's only human to look at what someone else has and, man, I'd give anything for that. Do you know how early they get up, what kind of work they do, what kind of side hustle they have? I've heard people talk about that in the context of Olympic athletes, right? I'd give anything to be standing on that podium with them. Okay, well, are you getting up at 4:00 in the morning and doing 4-hour workouts? And would you give anything? Or is that just something that you're telling yourself?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of a key marker of success potential. Is it not necessarily, are you going to beat your body into the dirt and do 4 hours of practice? Like, much respect to Olympic athletes. I'm never going to be there, and I'm totally, totally fine with the fact that I'm never going to be on that podium. But, by the same token, you kind of mentioned the same thing. If you don't get your shot in 30 seconds in the ring, are you going to stop fighting? I've used that analogy with some coaching students of mine too in the past, with, if you trip and fall down flat on your face, do you just lay down and wait for death to take you? Like, that's it, I'm done. Leaves piling on you.
Yeah.
Bikers riding over you like you're a speed bump. I can't imagine in any worlds where people would think falling down means that's it, I'm done. But we see it so often in entrepreneurship. Like, I make one misstep and I'm done. And I'm here to change that. I'm happy you're here to help me change that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things too, where like, I think the joy and excitement in life, it doesn't come from times when you are sitting in a hammock on the beach and you have no cares in the world. Like, when you look back, I don't know, maybe, I'm not at the end of my life, obviously, when I'm 80 or 70 or 90 or however, 100, 150, who knows with medicine nowadays, right? I think when you look back at the end of your life, you probably look at the defining moments, the moments where you succeeded because you were a little scared, or at least you swung for the fences and tried something that maybe you were scared to do. I don't think it comes from the comfort. I think it comes from the struggle, those moments when you look back, the memories that you cherish most.
And so we have reached the end of episode 100. It was a long one, but I think it was really worth it. We're celebrating the best of the first 50 episodes of Permission to Kick Ass. I gotta tell you, it was so hard to pick these clips because every single guest had some amazing insights to share. In fact, when I did the first cut of this episode, it clocked in at a massive 3 hours and 58 minutes. And that was before I recorded this script, all the words that I'm saying right now, introducing each segment. So with the help of my talented team, we were actually able to narrow it down to some insanely smart advice and insight from brilliant business people. Quick shout out here to the team that made this episode possible. Amy Cook, my brilliant VA who handles all my booking and keeps the production running. She's also helped me pick the new music for the show. I hope you love it. James Eade, who edits the show and makes everyone sound like a total rock star. Fernan, who writes the show notes and comes up with hilarious and insightful takes. You should see some of the ones on the cutting room floor that have us rolling. Enda Ndungu, who listened to every single one of the first 50 episodes to pull out the interesting and most funny moments, and she's already started on the back half of the first 100. Laura Valenti, who created the show graphics for us, both for the first 100 episodes and the brand new look you're going to be seeing from this point on. And of course, my most sincere thanks to you for listening, for sharing, for writing in to tell me when something made you laugh or changed the way you do things. I read every single note, and I even share them with my guests when you leave compliments. And I got to tell you, when you reach out, when you say all those lovely things, when you leave a rating, it just keeps me going. So I want to thank you for that. I'm looking forward to the next 100 interviews and beyond. So thank you for being with me on this journey, and let's go kick some ass. That's all for now. If you want to keep that kick-ass energy high, please take a minute to share this episode with someone that might need a high-octane dose of "you can do it." Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the Permission to Kick-Ass podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you stream your podcasts. I'm your host, Angie Coley, and I'm here rooting for you. Thanks for listening, and let's go kick some ass.